The chevrons locked in sequence, each metallic clang echoing through the gate room of Stargate Command like the countdown to something irreversible. Sergeant Walter Harriman's fingers moved across his console with practiced precision, but his voice carried an edge of confusion as he called out to the control room above. "Sir, we have an unscheduled off-world activation." General George Hammond leaned forward in his chair, eyes fixed on the massive ring of Naquata beginning its rotation 28 levels beneath Cheyenne Mountain. "IDC? Negative, sir. No recognition code." Walter's hands flew across the keyboard. "The address? I don't recognize this sequence. It's not in our database." "Close the iris," Hammond ordered, his tone leaving no room for debate. The titanium barrier spiraled shut with a metallic whisper, positioning itself 3 micrometers from the event horizon. Below, in the gate room, SF guards raised their P-90s toward the Stargate as the 7th chevron locked with a resonant thud. The wormhole erupted outward in its characteristic unstable vortex, the kawoosh that had vaporized MALP probes and Goa'uld scouts alike, before settling into its shimmering vertical pool of rippling blue energy. Something struck the iris immediately. Not the usual splatter of failed Goa'uld reconnaissance. This was different. A continuous shimmer of golden particles that scattered against the barrier like fireflies against glass, accompanied by a sound Hammond had never heard in 5 years of gate operations, a high-pitched whine that set teeth on edge and made the entire mountain feel like it was holding its breath. "Walter?" Hammond kept his voice steady. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy discharge at the iris. It's not biological matter. This is some kind of directed energy beam trying to rematerialize. The pattern's stuck in a buffer state." Major Samantha Carter burst through the control room door, still pulling on her black tack vest over her blue BDU shirt. Her blonde hair was slightly disheveled, suggesting she'd been in her lab when the alarm sounded. "General, if that's a sustained energy beam caught between the wormhole and the iris." "I know, Major. How long before it overloads?" Carter's blue eyes scanned the readouts, her astrophysicist's mind calculating trajectories Hammond couldn't begin to follow. "If the pattern doesn't dissipate? 30 seconds before the energy buildup causes catastrophic feedback through the gate. Recommendations? Open the iris. Let whatever it is come through, sir." Hammond's jaw tightened. 20 years of Air Force command had taught him when to trust his people. "Open it." The iris retracted. The golden shimmer coalesced instantly into a humanoid form that stumbled through the event horizon and collapsed on the gate room ramp. The wormhole disengaged behind him with its familiar whoosh, the Stargate's inner rings spinning to a dormant position. The man on the ramp pushed himself to his hands and knees, breathing hard. He wore a gold tunic with black collar and pants, a uniform Hammond didn't recognize from any military on Earth or any gold-fashioned Carter had catalogued. Command insignia adorned his chest, some kind of delta shield with stars. When he looked up, Hammond saw a face maybe 45 years old, handsome in a rugged way, with hazel eyes that swept the gate room with tactical precision despite obvious disorientation. "Don't move!" The SF team leader's shout echoed off concrete walls. 8 P-90 barrels tracked the stranger's slightest twitch. The man on the ramp slowly raised his hands, palms out, his gaze fixed on the massive circular device behind him. 7 concentric rings of alien technology that had been Earth's gateway to the stars, before shifting to the armed soldiers surrounding him. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to command but smart enough to recognize when he was outgunned. "I'm Captain James T. Kirk of the United Federation of Planets Starship Enterprise. I request to speak with whoever's in command of this facility." He paused, glancing again at the Stargate with something between wonder and calculation. "And I'd very much like to know what year this is." In the control room, Hammond exchanged a look with Carter. Her expression mirrored his own thought. This was going to be a very long debriefing. "SF teams, escort our guest to the holding room," Hammond said into the intercom. "Full medical scan, then I want him in the briefing room. Major Carter, get SG-1 assembled." All of them. Yes, sir. Hammond watched as the stranger, Kirk, allowed himself to be surrounded by armed airmen without resistance. The man moved with the confidence of a combat veteran, but there was something else in his bearing. An explorer's curiosity, perhaps. He studied everything: the iris mechanism, the MALP in the corner, the concrete and steel architecture of a facility that clearly wasn't the advanced technology he'd expected. As the SF team led Kirk toward the elevator, the captain stopped at the threshold and looked back at the Stargate one more time. Hammond saw recognition in those hazel eyes. Not familiarity. Kirk had never seen this device before, but understanding. This man knew what a door between worlds looked like, even if the technology was entirely different from whatever he was used to. General, Carter said quietly, still studying her console readings. I'm detecting residual transporter signatures in the energy pattern. Not Asgard beaming technology. This is something else entirely, matter-to-energy conversion at the quantum level, but the resolution is, sir, this is centuries beyond anything we've reverse-engineered from Goa'uld tech. 23rd century, Major? If he's telling the truth? Carter looked up, her scientific mind already racing through implications. We might be looking at our own future walking through that gate. Hammond allowed himself a slight smile. Or we might be looking at a very creative Goa'uld infiltration attempt. Let's find out which. Below, the gate room stood empty except for the Stargate itself. Silent now, its chevrons dark. But in Hammond's experience, that silence never lasted long. Something had just changed in the carefully balanced equation of Earth's survival among the stars. A captain without a ship had arrived. And the galaxy was about to get a lot more complicated. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Indeed. The briefing room on level 28 had hosted its share of unusual first contacts, Takare symbiotes, Asgard holograms, and more than one allegedly friendly Goa'uld. But James Kirk represented something entirely different, and the members of SG-1 assembled around the table knew it. Colonel Jack O'Neill sat with his usual posture of studied casual disinterest, but his dark eyes tracked every movement the stranger made. Major Carter had her laptop open, screen filled with energy signature analyses. Dr. Daniel Jackson adjusted his glasses, a leather-bound journal already filling with notes. Tilk stood by the door, arms crossed, his Jaffa warrior instincts reading body language that transcended galaxies. Kirk sat across from Hammond at the head of the table, remarkably composed for someone who'd been unconscious in the infirmary 30 minutes ago, while Dr. Fraser ran scans that confirmed he was completely, impossibly human. No Goa'uld symbiote. No Naquata in his bloodstream. No signs of Takare blending. Just a man with slightly elevated adrenaline and the kind of old scars that spoke to a career spent in harm's way. Let me see if I have this straight, O'Neill said, leaning back in his chair with a skepticism honed over years of dealing with false gods and alien liars. You're from Earth. Our Earth. Just 266 years in the future. You were on a spaceship. Starship, Kirk corrected gently. Right. Starship. When your transporter malfunctioned and dumped you through our Stargate, which you've never heard of, into a year where we're barely figuring out how to work alien technology your people apparently mastered generations ago. O'Neill's tone dripped with doubt. That about cover it? Accurately, yes. Kirk met the colonel's gaze without flinching. Though I'd add that the transporter malfunction coincided with an unexpected gravimetric distortion near a subspace anomaly. My chief engineer would have more technical details, but I was mid-transport when the Enterprise hit it. The next thing I knew, I was materializing into some kind of energy barrier 3 micrometers from an event horizon. Carter's fingers stopped typing. You measured the iris distance while you were trapped in the pattern buffer? Force of habit. Tactical assessment. Kirk's expression held a hint of dry humor. Useful skill when you spend your career exploring unknown space. Indeed, Tilk rumbled from his position by the door. A warrior's instinct transcends time. Daniel leaned forward, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. Captain Kirk, you keep saying you're from Earth's future, but you haven't asked the most obvious question. Why haven't you demanded to know what happened to make your timeline impossible? Or whether we're even the same Earth? Kirk's pause spoke volumes. Hammond watched the man's micro-expressions. The slight tightening around his eyes, the controlled breath. This was someone trained in diplomatic negotiations, choosing his words with care. Dr. Jackson, is it? At Daniel's nod, Kirk continued. I learned a long time ago that asking certain questions can contaminate timelines beyond repair. If I'm in my own past, and the linguistic drift suggests I am, your English is remarkably similar to Federation standard, then there are things I shouldn't know and things you shouldn't tell me. The Temporal Prime Directive, Carter breathed. You have protocols for time travel. We've encountered the situation before. Kirk's diplomatic phrasing drew a slight smile from Hammond. But I can tell you what won't contaminate anything. I've never heard of this Stargate in any historical record. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence in Federation history is April 5, 2063, in Bozeman, Montana. Whatever you're doing here in this facility didn't happen in your timeline, Hammond finished. Or it's so classified that it stays buried for 3 centuries. Kirk nodded slowly, his gaze returning to the panoramic window overlooking the gate room below. The massive ring stood silent, chevrons dark, but Hammond could see the wheels turning behind those hazel eyes. A starship captain evaluating an impossible tactical situation. General Hammond, Kirk said carefully, I need to understand what I've walked into. That device down there, the Stargate, it's a wormhole generator, isn't it? Near instantaneous travel across interstellar distances. Intergalactic, actually, Daniel corrected, unable to help himself. The ancients built them millions of years ago and seeded them across multiple galaxies. The ancients? First evolution, Tilk supplied. The builders of the Chapai. Kirk processed this with visible effort. In my timeline, humanity develops warp drive in 2063 and spends the next century exploring space at faster-than-light speeds. We discover that we're surrounded by dozens of spacefaring civilizations, most of whom achieved warp capability independently. But this, he gestured toward the gate. This suggests someone handed Earth the keys to the galaxy long before we were ready. More like we stole them, O'Neill said. With a nuclear weapon and a really bad day in Egypt. Long story. And now? Kirk's question was direct. What's Earth's situation in 2002? The security protocols, the weaponry, the fact that this facility is buried in a mountain, you're at war. The room went quiet. Hammond saw his team exchange glances, weighing how much to reveal to this potential intelligence goldmine or potential security nightmare. Finally, the general made a command decision. Major Carter, give Captain Kirk the overview. Unclassified version. Carter closed her laptop, meeting Kirk's eyes with the confident clarity of someone who'd explained impossible situations before. 8 years ago, we discovered the Stargate, and immediately made contact with a parasitic race called the Goa'uld. They're snake-like symbiotics who take human hosts and pose as gods, R.A. Apophis, Baal. For thousands of years, they've enslaved millions of humans across the galaxy using Stargates to transport them from Earth. We're fighting a war of survival against system lords who have vastly superior technology and nearly unlimited resources. Kirk's expression hardened. Enslaved humans. Posing as gods. They seeded this galaxy with Earth humans as hosts and worshippers. Daniel added. Most planets we visit are populated by humans who were taken from Earth during various historical periods. Ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, Viking-era Scandinavia. That's impossible. But Kirk's tone suggested he knew it wasn't. The Federation has catalogued thousands of humanoid species, but we always assumed convergent evolution, not a breeding program by parasitic aliens, O'Neill finished. Welcome to the Stargate program, Captain. where the Prime Directive gets violated every Tuesday and the false gods actually shoot back. Kirk stood, moving to the window overlooking the gate room. Hammond watched him carefully, recognizing the posture of a commander processing strategic implications that dwarfed any single mission. If the Goa'uld have been operating for thousands of years with superior technology, Kirk said quietly, how is Earth still standing? Because we cheat, O'Neill replied. A lot. And we have very good friends. Kirk turned back to face them, and Hammond saw the exact moment the starship captain made his decision. Whatever temporal protocols or personal desires to return home existed, they were being weighed against something more immediate. General Hammond, I'm going to be direct with you. I don't know if I can get home. The dimensional rift that brought me here could take years to locate and stabilize, assuming it's even possible. But I am a Starfleet officer, and I took an oath to protect humanity from threats both foreign and domestic. Where are you going with this, Captain? Hammond asked, though he already suspected. I'm formally requesting permission to assist your operations until such time as I can return to my proper timeline. My knowledge of 23rd century tactics and strategy could compromise temporal mechanics, but my command experience fighting hostile forces in deep space is entirely relevant to your current situation. Kirk's shoulders squared. You're fighting a war with limited resources against an enemy that sees humans as property. That's exactly the kind of fight Starfleet trains us for. He wishes to join SG-1. Tilk observed with approval. Or any team that'll have me. Kirk amended. I've lost my ship, but I haven't lost my purpose. O'Neill looked at Hammond with raised eyebrows. Carter was already pulling up personnel integration protocols on her laptop. Daniel was practically vibrating with questions about 23rd century human culture. Hammond made his decision with the same instinct that had kept Earth alive for 8 years of gate operations. Provisional assignment, Captain. You'll operate under Colonel O'Neill's command and SGC protocols. No technology sharing that could contaminate the timeline. Full mission briefings and debriefings. And the first time I think you're a security risk. You'll lock me in a cell and throw away the key. Understood, General. Kirk extended his hand. Thank you. Hammond shook it, the grip firm and honest. Major Carter, get Captain Kirk processed to Quartermaster. Standard BDUs in gear. Colonel, brief him on SG-1 mission protocols and P-90 operation. Oh, this'll be fun, O'Neill muttered, but Hammond caught the hint of respect in his two IC's voice. As the team filed out toward the armory, Hammond remained at the window, watching the Stargate below. A captain from the future was now part of Earth's defense in the present. The galaxy wasn't going to know what hit it. The armory on level 19 smelled like gun oil and ozone, familiar scents that reminded Kirk of the Enterprise's weapons locker even if the technology was centuries removed. He stood at the firing range while O'Neill demonstrated the FNP-90 with the kind of casual competence that spoke to thousands of hours of muscle memory. 50-round magazine, fully automatic, effective range about 200 meters. O'Neill fired a controlled burst downrange, the weapon's distinctive report echoing off concrete. Armor-piercing rounds punched through Jaffa armor like tissue paper. Your future people probably have fancy beam weapons, but this'll keep you breathing when the staff blasts start flying. Kirk accepted the weapon, feeling its weight and balance. Lighter than a phaser rifle, bulkier than a hand phaser, but the mechanics were straightforward enough. He sighted downrange and squeezed off 3 controlled bursts, grouping tight center mass on the target. Not bad for a guy who's used to point-and-shoot energy weapons, O'Neill observed. Carter, you want to explain why our new friend's sidearm made your equipment go haywire? Carter stood at a workbench, Kirk's phaser disassembled in front of her with the reverence of an archaeologist examining a priceless artifact. She'd been studying it for the past hour, while Tilk supervised Kirk's gear fitting and Daniel peppered him with carefully vague questions about 23rd century culture that wouldn't violate temporal protocols. Sir, this is incredible. Carter looked up, her blue eyes bright with scientific enthusiasm. The power cell uses a dilithium crystal matrix I can barely begin to understand. The energy output is calibrated to 16 different settings, from a mild stun that disrupts neural activity to a disintegration setting that converts matter directly into plasma. The particle beam is phased, hence phaser, and the targeting sensors are integrated with a subspace field generator that, honestly, sir, half of this shouldn't be theoretically possible. Welcome to my world, Kirk said with a slight smile. My chief engineer would tell you it's entirely possible. Just temperamental. Scotty can coax miracles out of machinery that should have burned out decades ago. Scotty? Daniel asked, looking up from his notes. Montgomery Scott. Best engineer in Starfleet. Kirk's expression flickered with something harder to read. Homesickness, maybe, or concern for a crew that had no idea where their captain had disappeared to. If anyone can track the subspace distortion that brought me here, it'll be him. Assuming your ship survived whatever hit you, O'Neill said bluntly. No offense, Captain, but we've learned not to count on rescue. None taken. Tactical realism is something I appreciate. Kirk reassembled the phaser with practiced efficiency, the components clicking together like second nature. But Starfleet doesn't abandon officers lost in the field. They'll be looking. The question is whether they'll find anything in this timeline. Tilk approached, carrying standard black BDUs and a tactical vest in his massive hands. Captain Kirk, you will find these more practical for gate operations than your Starfleet uniform. The Goa'uld often target symbols of authority. Kirk accepted the gear, noting the name tape already prepared. Kirk. Someone in Quartermaster worked fast. In my experience, enemies target authority regardless of what you're wearing. But I appreciate the practical approach. You will also require this. Tilk handed over a GDO transmitter. The garage door opener transmits your identification code through the Stargate. Without it, the iris remains closed and you will die upon rematerialization. Cheerful thought. Kirk examined the device, smaller than a communicator but presumably just as vital. I assume this is non-negotiable equipment. Very much so, Carter confirmed. We've lost good people who couldn't transmit their IDC in time. Don't lose that transmitter, Captain. The armory door opened and General Hammond entered, followed by a severe-looking woman in civilian clothes carrying a leather briefcase. Her expression suggested she viewed Kirk the way a xenobiologist might examine an interesting but potentially dangerous specimen. Captain Kirk, this is Catherine Langford, civilian consultant to the Stargate program. Hammond's tone carried a warning Kirk recognized, political complications ahead. She has some questions about your arrival. Ms. Langford. Kirk offered his hand. She shook it with professional coolness. Captain? I've reviewed Dr. Fraser's medical scans and Major Carter's preliminary technical analysis. Langford's voice was crisp, educated, carrying the weight of someone accustomed to being listened to. Your presence here represents an extraordinary security concern. A man from Earth's future, carrying technology centuries beyond our current capability, appearing through the Stargate during an active war with the Goa'uld. I understand your concern, Kirk replied evenly. If the situation were reversed and someone from my past appeared on the Enterprise, I'd have similar questions about intelligence leaks and timeline contamination. Then you'll understand why I need assurances that you won't share information about future technology, historical events, or tactical developments that could alter the timeline that produces your Federation. Kirk met her gaze squarely. Ms. Langford, I've dealt with temporal mechanics more times than I care to remember. I know the risks of causality loops and timeline contamination. I won't share anything that could prevent my own future from occurring. You have my word as a Starfleet officer. Forgive me, Captain, but we only have your word that Starfleet even exists. The room went quiet. O'Neill's expression hardened slightly, and Kirk noticed Tilk shift his weight, subtle body language that suggested SG-1 was already protective of their provisional new member. Catherine, Hammond said carefully, Captain Kirk has submitted to every security protocol we've asked. Medical scans confirm he's human. His equipment is clearly advanced technology with no Goa'uld design elements. Unless you're suggesting this is an elaborate cover story. I'm suggesting we don't know enough. Langford opened her briefcase and extracted a slim folder. Which is why I'm recommending that Captain Kirk be assigned to SG-1's next off-world mission under strict observation. If he's genuinely from our future and genuinely committed to helping us, he'll prove it in the field. Kirk raised an eyebrow. A test. Call it a practical demonstration of your capabilities and intentions. Colonel O'Neill's team departs in 6 hours for P3X421, a human settlement we've been monitoring. Recent MALP surveillance suggests a Goa'uld presence has established itself there in the past month. SG-1's mission is reconnaissance and potential first contact with the local population. A milk run, O'Neill translated. Usually. Though with our luck, milk runs tend to turn into running firefights. You want to see how I handle first contact with a pre-warp civilization under Goa'uld occupation? Kirk nodded slowly, recognizing the strategic logic. And whether I'll follow orders or try to contaminate the timeline with advanced knowledge? Precisely, Langford confirmed. Daniel stepped forward, his diplomatic instincts clearly uncomfortable with the interrogation approach. Catherine, that's not exactly welcoming. It's smart, Kirk interrupted. Ms. Langford is right to be cautious. I'm an unknown variable in a war you've been fighting for 8 years. Trust has to be earned, not assumed. He looked at Hammond. General, I accept the assignment. What are the mission parameters? Hammond's expression softened slightly. SG-1 will gate to P3X421 at 0800 hours. Reconnaissance only, assess the Goa'uld presence, make contact with locals if safe, avoid engagement unless necessary. Colonel O'Neill has tactical command. You follow his orders without question, Captain. Is that clear? Crystal clear, General. Kirk turned to O'Neill. Colonel, I'm at your disposal. O'Neill studied him for a long moment, then cracked a slight smile. You know, I'm starting to like you. Anyone who doesn't argue about chain of command gets points in my book. Carter, make sure Kirk's phaser is fully charged. Daniel, prep the cultural briefing. Tilk, show our guest where the coffee is. He's going to need it. There is coffee in the 23rd century, right? Daniel asked hopefully. Best invention humanity ever made. Kirk confirmed. Right after the warp drive. As SG-1 dispersed to their pre-mission preparations, Kirk caught Hammond watching him with the calculating gaze of a general who'd seen too many promises broken and too many allies turn into enemies. Captain, Hammond said quietly, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt because my gut says you're exactly who you claim to be. But if you're wrong about your ability to avoid timeline contamination, or if you turn out to be something else entirely, I will personally make sure you never see another Stargate activation. Are we clear? Completely, sir. Kirk's tone held no resentment, only professional acknowledgement. I've lost my ship, my crew, and possibly my way home. I'm not about to lose my integrity too. Hammond nodded once, then left the armory. Kirk stood alone for a moment, surrounded by weapons and equipment from a century that wasn't supposed to need him, preparing for a mission through a device his timeline had forgotten existed. He'd faced impossible situations before. Klingon and Romulans, doomsday machines and godlike entities. But those battles had the Enterprise beneath his feet and a crew he trusted at his back. This time, James T. Kirk was the away team. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the electric anticipation of genuine exploration into unknown territory, with stakes that mattered and people worth fighting for. 6 hours until the gate opened. Kirk began reviewing the P-90's field maintenance procedures. In his experience, preparation was the difference between coming home and being a cautionary tale in someone else's mission log. He intended to come home. The question was which home that would be. The gate room thrummed with controlled energy at 0755 hours. Kirk stood beside SG-1 at the base of the ramp, standard BDUs replacing his Starfleet uniform. P-90 mag locked to his tactical vest alongside the phaser he'd been cleared to carry as backup. The weight felt different from his usual loadout, but the pre-mission adrenaline was universal across centuries. Walter Harriman's voice echoed from the control room. Chevron 1 encoded. The Stargate's inner ring rotated with mechanical precision, the first symbol locking into place with that distinctive clang Kirk had heard during his chaotic arrival. He watched, fascinated despite himself, as ancient technology millions of years old performed functions that Starfleet achieved with warp nacelles and transporter systems. First time's always something special, O'Neill commented, adjusting his boonie hat. Wait until you actually step through. It's like being flushed down the galaxy's largest toilet. Your descriptions are always so poetic, Jack, Daniel said, tightening the straps on his pack. He wore glasses that seemed perpetually on the verge of sliding down his nose, his weapon held with the awkwardness of someone more comfortable with ancient texts than firefights. I speak truth. O'Neill glanced at Kirk. You ready for this, Captain? No shame in sitting this one out if you're still adjusting to being 200 years in the past. Kirk checked his GDO transmitter one final time. Colonel, I've been thrown into hostile situations on dozens of worlds. The technology is different, but the fundamentals are the same. Watch your team's back, adapt to local conditions, and try not to start an intergalactic incident. He'll fit right in, Carter said with a slight smile. She'd attached sensor equipment to her vest, the scientist-soldier duality that Kirk found remarkably similar to his own science officers. Though we specialize in intergalactic incidents. Tilk stood silent, staff weapon held with the casual readiness of a warrior who'd carried it for decades. The Jaffa had been watching Kirk throughout the morning briefing with an intensity that felt less like suspicion and more like assessment. Finally, he'd given a single nod, approval earned through observation rather than words. Chevron 7 locked. The wormhole exploded outward in its violent birth, the kawoosh O'Neill had mentioned, before stabilizing into a shimmering vertical pool of liquid-like energy. The event horizon rippled with colors Kirk's eyes struggled to process, physics operating on principles that made transporter technology look primitive by comparison. SG-1, you have a go! Hammond's voice announced from above. Captain Kirk, welcome to the Stargate program. Try to bring my people home in one piece. I'll do my best, General, Kirk replied. O'Neill led the way up the ramp without ceremony. Remember, it's gonna feel weird. Don't fight it, don't try to breathe, and for crying out loud, don't stop halfway through or you'll end up scattered across several solar systems. Then he stepped through the event horizon and vanished. Carter went next, followed by Daniel. Tilk gestured for Kirk to precede him, the warrior taking rear guard position. Kirk appreciated the tactical courtesy even as he approached the rippling surface of the wormhole, every instinct screaming that walking into a vertical pool of unstable energy was insane. He stepped through anyway. The universe inverted. Kirk's body dissolved into constituent atoms, consciousness fragmenting across impossible distances as the wormhole's subspace tunnel compressed light years into a single step. Cold beyond cold, pressure without dimension, the sensation of being everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. His Starfleet training had prepared him for transporter dematerialization, that brief moment of non-existence between transmission and rematerialization. This was nothing like that. This was falling through the spaces between reality, while ancient technology calculated trajectories across galactic coordinates, his pattern stored in a buffer that predated human civilization by millions of years. Time lost meaning. Distance became abstract. For an eternal instant, James Kirk existed as pure information traveling faster than light through a stable wormhole that shouldn't exist according to every physical law he knew. Then he stumbled out the other side onto alien soil beneath a golden sun. Kirk dropped to one knee, gasping, his stomach doing complicated gymnastics that the Enterprise's inertial dampeners would never have allowed. The P-90 was suddenly very heavy in his hands, the ground beneath his boots very solid, and the air in his lungs very sweet despite tasting faintly of ozone and something floral he couldn't identify. "First time's always rough," Carter said sympathetically, already scanning the area with a handheld device. "The nausea passes." Kirk forced himself upright, forcing down the disorientation through sheer willpower. Around him stretched a landscape of rolling hills covered in purple-tinged grass, a forest of crimson-leaved trees in the distance, and a dirt path leading toward what looked like pre-industrial settlements, stone buildings with thatched roofs visible perhaps 2 kilometers away. The Stargate stood behind them, identical to Earth's except for subtle differences in the chevron symbols. The DHD, dial home device, sat nearby, a pedestal of crystalline technology waiting to send them home. "Welcome to P3X421, O'Neill announced, scanning the tree line with his P90. "Population approximately 1,500 humans, technology level medieval European, and according to our last MALP probe, recently acquired a Goa'uld overlord who claims to be the Egyptian god Khonsu." Khonsu, Daniel supplied helpfully, was the Egyptian god of the moon. Traveler, protector, healer in some traditions, but also associated with violent aspects. "Short version, Daniel," O'Neill interrupted. "Minor Goa'uld, probably System Lord wannabe. Definitely bad news for the locals." Tilk emerged from the Stargate last, staff weapons sweeping the perimeter. "I do not recognize the name Khonsu among the System Lord's ranks." "He is likely a minor underlord seeking to establish domain, while the System Lords are occupied with their war." Kirk checked his phaser, then the P90. "What's our tactical approach, Colonel?" O'Neill pointed toward the settlement. "We make contact with the locals, find out what Khonsu wants with this backwater, and assess whether we can help without getting ourselves killed. Standard first contact protocols apply." Daniel does the talking, Carter does the scanning, Tilk looks intimidating, and I shoot things if diplomacy fails. "And me?" Kirk asked. "You watch and learn how we do things in the 21st century. Consider it a cultural exchange program." O'Neill started down the path, weapon ready but not raised. "And Kirk? If this Khonsu shows up, let us handle it. Goa'uld have a thing about new faces, and I'd rather not explain why we brought Captain Future to the negotiation." The team moved in tactical formation, O'Neill on point, Carter and Daniel in the middle running sensors and preparing translation notes, Tilk and Kirk on rear security. Kirk fell into the rhythm easily, the centuries between their training methods mattering less than the universal language of small unit tactics. They crested a low hill, and the settlements sprawled below them. Stone buildings arranged in concentric circles around a central plaza, fields of grain in geometric patterns, and Kirk's jaw tightened, a structure that didn't belong. A golden pyramid maybe 30 meters tall, squatting in the plaza like a tumor. Goa'uld architecture, unmistakable even from this distance. "That's new," Carter said, checking her previous mission data. "Last MALP survey 3 weeks ago showed no Goa'uld presence." "Khonsu works fast," O'Neill muttered. "Tilk, what are we looking at?" The Jaffa studied the pyramid with the cold assessment of someone who'd served false gods for decades. "A minor encampment. Perhaps 20 Jaffa warriors, a single Hatak in orbit or recently departed. Khonsu establishes his presence but has not yet committed significant resources." "Which means?" Kirk asked. "Which means he's testing whether this world is worth the trouble." Daniel translated. "If the locals resist or if another system lord notices, Khonsu can withdraw without losing face. If not, he's got a new source of hosts and worshippers." Kirk felt anger kindle in his chest. The same fury that had driven him to violate Starfleet regulations more than once when confronting slavery and exploitation. "We're going to stop him." "Easy, Captain," O'Neill warned. "We're here to gather intelligence, not start a war. The Goa'uld have resources we can't match. We pick our battles carefully. Colonel, those are human beings down there being enslaved by a parasite pretending to be a god. The Prime Directive doesn't apply to." "We don't have a Prime Directive," O'Neill cut him off, voice hard. "We have survival. Earth's survival. these people's survival. And sometimes that means we can't save everyone, no matter how much we want to. Kirk met his gaze, recognizing the weight of command decisions that left scars. He'd made those calls himself. The difference was Starfleet operated from a position of strength, with the Federation's resources behind every decision. SGC operated from desperation, fighting a war they were losing more often than winning. Understood, Colonel, Kirk said quietly. Your command. O'Neill's expression softened slightly. Let's go meet the locals. Maybe we'll get lucky and Kansa won't be home. They descended toward the settlement, 4 soldiers and 1 displaced starship captain, while the golden pyramid gleamed in the alien sun like a promise of violence waiting to be fulfilled. Kirk's hand rested on his phaser. In his experience, luck was something you made yourself. And he had a feeling they were about to make some very bad luck for a false god. The settlement's perimeter was marked by crude wooden stakes and terrified sentries who dropped their spears the moment they saw SG-1 approaching. Kirk watched Daniel step forward, hands raised in the universal gesture of peace, speaking in what sounded like ancient Egyptian mixed with other linguistic elements Kirk couldn't place. The sentries responded with rapid-fire dialogue, gesturing frantically toward the golden pyramid. One word repeated. Kansu. The fear in their voices transcended language barriers. They say Kansu arrived 12 days ago. Daniel translated, his expression darkening. Came through the Stargate with 20 Jaffa warriors and declared himself their god. He's demanded tribute, grain, livestock and… Daniel's voice tightened. Young women for potential hosts. Kirk's jaw clenched. How many has he taken? 3 so far. They're being held in the pyramid. O'Neill's knuckles whitened on his P90. Carter, are you reading any Naquata signatures? She swept her scanner across the pyramid. Multiple readings, sir. At least 15 Jaffa inside based on the symbiote signatures. And 1 significantly stronger reading at the pyramid's apex, probably Kansu himself. No Hatak in orbit. Tilk added, scanning the sky. Kansa operates with limited resources. He is vulnerable. Or it's a trap, O'Neill countered. Minor Goa'uld love overcompensating with ambushes. He turned to the sentries, nodding toward the settlement. Tell them we're here to help, Daniel. But we need information first. The sentries led them through narrow streets where villagers watched from doorways with hollow eyes, the look Kirk had seen on too many oppressed populations across the galaxy. Children clung to their mothers. Old men gripped farming tools like weapons they knew wouldn't matter against staff blasts. They reached a larger building, some kind of communal hall. Inside, an elderly woman with silver hair and weathered hands sat on a simple wooden chair that might as well have been a throne. She stood when SG-1 entered, studying them with intelligence that suggested she was far more than a frightened villager. I am Elder Mira, she said in accented but clear English. You are the Tauri. We have heard stories of your people from travelers who passed through the Chapai before Kansa came. Kirk raised an eyebrow. These people had contact with other worlds, New Earth's gate designation. More sophisticated than they appeared. We've come to assess the situation, O'Neill said diplomatically. Tell us about Kansu. Myra's expression hardened. He is a demon wearing God's skin. He came with warriors who carry serpents in their bellies and weapons that burn flesh from bone. He claims dominion over us because we are his people, transplanted here by our millennia ago. She spat the name. We do not worship Are. We do not worship anyone. But Kansa says we will learn or die. The 3 women he took. Daniel pressed gently. Are they still alive? He holds them in his temple. Says he will choose the worthiest to be his queen, to carry his essence. Myra's voice broke slightly. My granddaughter is among them. Kirk stepped forward before he could stop himself. We'll get them back. O'Neill shot him a warning look, but Myra's eyes locked onto Kirk with desperate hope. You would challenge a god? I've challenged entities that make Kansa look like a pretender with a stage costume, Kirk replied. Because that's all he is, a parasite with stolen technology. Your granddaughter and the others are still human. Still worth saving. Kirk, O'Neill said quietly, the warning clear. But Mira was already standing straighter, and Kirk could see the calculation in her ancient eyes. If you free our people, Tauri, we will aid you however we can. We know Kansa's routines. His Jaffa patrol at dawn and dusk. Midday, when the sun is highest, only 4 guards remain at the pyramid entrance. Carter checked her watch. We've got 2 hours until midday. Tilk moved to the doorway, studying the pyramid in the distance. A frontal assault with 4 warriors against 15 Jaffa and a Goa'uld is tactically unsound. We would be slaughtered. Unless we don't go through the front door. Kirk said, the beginning of a plan forming. He'd infiltrated enough enemy installations to recognize the patterns. Mira, does Khonsu ever leave the pyramid? Each evening at sunset he walks among us. Inspects his domain. The Jaffa form a perimeter, but Khonsu himself remains exposed. He believes we are too frightened to attack. Arrogance, Tilk rumbled. It is the Goa'uld's greatest weakness. O'Neill was already seeing it, Kirk could tell. The tactical gears turning behind dark eyes that had run operations against impossible odds before. We draw Khonsu out. Hit the Jaffa perimeter with surprise fire, create chaos. While they're focused on us, someone slips into the pyramid through the confusion and extracts the hostages. Someone being me, Daniel said immediately. Someone being you and Kirk, O'Neill corrected, surprising them both. Daniel knows the language and culture. Kirk knows how to improvise when plans go sideways. Carter, Tilk, and I will provide the distraction. Colonel, I should. Carter began. Major, I need your technical expertise on our firing line, not playing hero in a Goa'uld pyramid. O'Neill's tone brooked no argument. He turned to Kirk. This is your audition, Captain. Show me that Starfleet training is worth a damn in the real world. Get those women out alive. Kirk nodded once, recognizing the trust being extended. Understood, Colonel. Mira, Daniel said. We'll need detailed layout of the pyramid's interior. Guard positions, where Khonsu holds the women, any secondary exits. The elder woman's face transformed with fierce determination. I will tell you everything. But know this, Tauri, if you fail, Khonsu will take vengeance on every person in this settlement. We are risking everything. Then we won't fail, Kirk said with the confidence of a captain who talked his way past Klingon commanders and Romulan warbids. You have my word. O'Neill pulled Kirk aside while Daniel and Carter worked with Mira on pyramid schematics. Listen to me carefully, Captain. I'm trusting you because my gut says you're the real deal and because Daniel needs backup who can think on his feet. But if this goes wrong, if Khonsu takes you as a host or if those women die because you cowed it, I'll follow Daniel's lead on cultural protocols and extraction procedures. Kirk interrupted. But if Khonsu himself shows up and threatens those hostages, I'm not going to stand there and debate philosophy. I'll do whatever's necessary to complete the mission. O'Neill studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good. That's the right answer. He checked his watch. We've got 90 minutes to plan this. Let's make sure we don't give Khonsu any new hosts to play with. The team spent the next hour reviewing every detail. Carter identified weak points in Jaffa patrol patterns. Tilk provided intelligence on standard Goa'uld security protocols. Daniel memorized phrases that might buy them crucial seconds if discovered. Kirk studied the pyramid layout with the same intensity he'd brought to every away mission brief, knowing that in hostile territory, information was survival. At 1,145 hours, they moved into position. Kirk crouched beside Daniel behind a grain storage building with clear sideline to the pyramid's entrance. His phaser was set to heavy stun, enough to drop a Jaffa but not kill, honoring Starfleet principles even in this savage timeline. The P-90 was backup, lethal if necessary. Across the plaza, he could see O'Neill, Carter, and Tilk spreading out into crossfire positions. Professional. Disciplined. Everything Starfleet taught about small unit tactics, executed by people who'd learned it in actual combat rather than simulations. Daniel's hand touched his shoulder. When they start shooting, we move fast and quiet. The pyramid's rear entrance should be unguarded for maybe 60 seconds while the Jaffa respond to the attack. That's our window. Understood. Kirk's pulse was steady, adrenaline controlled. Daniel, have you done this before? The hostage extraction under fire? Daniel's smile was wry behind his glasses. More times than I can count. Usually it's me who needs extracting though, so this is a nice change. A staff weapon blast suddenly split the air, Tilk's opening shot, perfectly timed. The Jaffa guards at the pyramid entrance spun toward the threat, energy weapons charging. O'Neill and Carter opened up with their P-90s, controlled bursts that forced the Jaffa into defensive positions. Go! Daniel hissed. Kirk followed him in a dead sprint toward the pyramid's shadowed rear, boots silent on packed earth, every sense hyperalert for threats. They reached the entrance, an ornate doorway carved with hieroglyphics, just as more staff blasts lit up the plaza. Inside, the pyramid's interior glowed with amber light from torches and aquata power conduits. Kirk's hand found his phaser as voices echoed from deeper within, Jaffa responding to the external attack, exactly as planned. Daniel pointed toward a descending staircase. Mira had said the holding cells were below ground level, away from Kansa's throne room. They descended into the false god's domain, 2 men against an empire of parasites, with 3 lives depending on speed and silence. Kirk had faced worse odds. Usually. The pyramid's lower level reeked of incense and ozone, the walls covered in gold leaf that reflected torchlight in dancing patterns. Kirk moved with phaser raised, Daniel right behind him, both men hyper-aware that every second counted. Above them, staff weapon blasts echoed through stone, O'Neill's distraction holding, but for how long? There, Daniel whispered, pointing to a corridor lined with barred chambers. They found the 3 women in the third cell, huddled together on stone benches. Young, maybe 18 to 25, wearing simple peasant clothes but with defiant fire in their eyes that hadn't been extinguished by 12 days of captivity. One of them, dark hair, Myra's sharp cheekbones, stood immediately. You are Tauri, she said in accented English. Grandmother said you might come. I'm Daniel Jackson. This is Captain Kirk. We're getting you out. Daniel worked the cell's locking mechanism, some kind of Naquata-powered magnetic seal. Carter, I could really use your help here, he muttered, fingers struggling with alien technology. Kirk scanned the corridor, ears tracking the sounds of combat above. The staff blasts were intensifying, bad sign. Daniel, we need to move. I know, just... The lock disengaged with a hiss. Got it. Ladies, stay close and stay quiet. They emerged from the cell just as footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Heavy boots. Multiple contacts. Kirk grabbed Daniel's shoulder, pulling him and the women into an adjacent chamber, some kind of storage room filled with golden artifacts and weapons. 4 Jaffa warriors descended the stairs, staff weapons ready, speaking in their guttural language. Kirk didn't need translation to understand. They were searching for intruders. Daniel's eyes went wide behind his glasses. We're trapped. If they search systematically, they won't. Kirk adjusted his phaser to maximum stun, checking the power cell. Still at 70%. When I move, take the women and run for the exit. Don't stop. Kirk, you can't fight for Jaffa alone. I fought worse. Kirk's tone left no room for argument. Trust me, Doctor. He stepped into the corridor before Daniel could protest. The Jaffa spun toward him, staff weapons rising. Kirk fired first. A bright orange beam that caught the lead warrior center mass, dropping him instantly. The others scattered, returning fire with energy blasts that scorched stone where Kirk had been standing. He rolled, came up firing, dropped a second Jaffa with precision Starfleet training had drilled into muscle memory. The remaining 2 split up, flanking. Professional tactics that would have impressed Kirk if he wasn't busy staying alive. Staff blasts forced him behind a stone column as superheated air singed his sleeve. He caught a glimpse of Daniel herding the women toward the stairs. Good. Kirk activated his communicator by pure instinct, forgetting for a critical second that it wouldn't reach the Enterprise. The Jaffa took advantage, one closing to melee range while the other provided covering fire. The warrior swung his staff weapon like a quarterstaff. Kirk blocked with his P-90, the impact jarring his arms, then drove an elbow into the Jaffa's throat. The warrior staggered back, symbiote-enhanced strength recovering quickly. Kirk fired his phaser point-blank, the beam catching the Jaffa in the abdomen. The warrior collapsed. The last Jaffa roared something, probably a battle cry, and charged. Kirk squeezed the phaser's trigger. Nothing. Power cell depleted. 3 shots at maximum stun had drained it completely. Kirk dropped the useless weapon and brought up his P-90, finger on the trigger, knowing that this would be lethal force, knowing he had no choice. A staff blast caught the Jaffa from behind, dropping him mid-charge. Tilk stood at the stairwell entrance, staff weapon smoking. Captain Kirk. Dr. Jackson required assistance. I provided it. Kirk exhaled slowly, adrenaline still singing through his veins. Appreciated, Tilk. The women? Safe with O'Neill and Major Carter. We must withdraw immediately. More Jaffa approach from the plaza, and Khonsu has been alerted to our presence. They sprinted up the stairs into chaos. The pyramid's main chamber was a battlefield. Scorch marks on golden walls, 2 more Jaffa down, and through the entrance Kirk could see O'Neill and Carter laying down suppressing fire, while Daniel shepherded the rescued women toward the tree line. There! A voice boomed in English, amplified and resonant with harmonic distortion. The Tauri dare violate the domain of Khonsu! The Goa'uld emerged from a side chamber, and Kirk's first thought was that the parasite had excellent taste in hosts. The man was tall, powerfully built, with dark skin and the kind of physical presence that would have commanded attention even without the glowing eyes and ribbon device on his hand. He wore elaborate golden armor styled after Egyptian royalty, cobra headdress included. You will kneel before your god. Khonsu raised his ribbon device, the Karakesh that could kill with focused thought. Kirk did not kneel. Instead, he raised his P-90 and fired. Khonsu deflected the bullets with a casual gesture of his hand, some kind of personal shielding or telekinetic barrier. The Goa'uld's eyes flared brighter with rage. Insolent human! You dare! Tilk's staff blast caught Khonsu in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. The false god snarled, his ribbon device lashing out with energy that sent Tilk flying backward into a stone pillar. The Jaffa hit hard and didn't move. Tilk! Kirk started toward him, but Khonsu was already advancing, the ribbon device glowing with lethal intent. You will be my new host, human. Your defiance will be crushed, your body my vessel, your mind my slave for eternity. Kirk raised his P-90 again, knowing it was futile, knowing he was out of options. Carter's voice crackled through his radio. Kirk, get down! He dropped flat as an explosion ripped through the pyramid's entrance. C4, precisely placed, bringing down the ornate doorway in a cascade of stone and gold. The shockwave threw Khonsu backward, his concentration broken. Move, move, move! O'Neill's shout cut through the ringing in Kirk's ears. Kirk grabbed Tilk, the Jaffa was conscious but dazed, and hauled him toward the collapsed entrance. Carter appeared through the dust, providing covering fire as remaining Jaffa scrambled to respond. Kirk pushed Tilk through the gap first, then followed, ears ringing, lungs burning. They emerged into sunlight and chaos. The plaza was a war zone, villagers fleeing in every direction, staff blasts scorching earth where SG-1 had been positioned minutes before. Daniel had the 3 women halfway to the Stargate, O'Neill and Carter laying down retreat fire. Go! O'Neill shouted at Kirk. Get to the gate! Behind them, Khonsu emerged from the pyramid's ruins, eyes blazing with fury, his voice carrying across the settlement. Jaffa! Kree! Kill the Tauri! Kill them all! Kirk ran, supporting Tilk as the Jaffa's strength returned. Staff blasts chased them across the plaza, superheated energy that turned stone to slag and grass to ash. He saw villagers caught in crossfire, saw Elder Mira directing her people to shelter with the calm of someone who'd faced worse. They reached the Stargate. Daniel was already dialing, his fingers flying across the DHD's crystal interface. The chevrons locked in sequence, 1, 2, 3. Each mechanical clang a countdown to survival or death. 4, 5, 6. A staff blast hit the ground beside Kirk, throwing him sideways. He rolled, came up firing his P-90 blind, buying seconds. Tilk was on his feet now, staff weapon returning fire with the precision of decades of muscle memory. 7. The wormhole erupted outward, stabilized, salvation in rippling blue energy. Go! O'Neill shoved the 3 women through first. Daniel followed, then Carter. Tilk provided covering fire as Kirk and O'Neill retreated up the ramp. The colonel paused at the event horizon, turning back toward the village where Kansa stood in front of his damaged pyramid, ribbon device raised in impotent fury. "Sorry about the property damage," O'Neill shouted. "Send us the bill." Then he grabbed Kirk's vest and pulled them both through the Stargate. The universe inverted again, wormhole physics compressing distance into impossible geometry. Kirk's consciousness fragmented across light years, his last coherent thought wondering if Kansa would follow them through, if Earth's iris would hold, if... He stumbled out onto the SGC ramp and dropped to his knees, gasping. Around him, SG-1 materialized one by one, the 3 rescued women collapsing in relief as SGC medical teams rushed forward. "Close the iris!" Hammond's voice boomed from the control room. The titanium barrier spiraled shut just as the Stargate activated from the other side. Incoming wormhole, Kansa's forces trying to follow. Something impacted the iris with tremendous force, but the barrier held. The wormhole disengaged. Silence filled the gate room except for ragged breathing and the quiet sobs of the rescued women being wrapped in thermal blankets. Kirk looked up at O'Neill, who was checking his team with the practiced eye of a commander counting his people home. When the colonel's gaze found Kirk, something passed between them, recognition maybe. Respect earned in fire. "Not bad, Captain," O'Neill said, extending a hand. "For your first milk run." Kirk accepted the hand, let O'Neill pull him to his feet. "If that was a milk run, Colonel, I'm terrified to see what you consider a difficult mission." "You're learning." O'Neill clapped his shoulder. "Daniel, get those women to the infirmary. Tilk, medical check for that concussion. Carter. Already running diagnostics on the mission data, sir." Hammond descended from the control room, his expression grave but satisfied. "SG-1, Captain Kirk, good work. Debrief in 30 minutes. Get cleaned up first." As the team dispersed, Kirk stood alone on the ramp for a moment, staring at the silent Stargate. He'd stepped through that ring into another world, fought false gods, rescued innocents from slavery. The Enterprise felt very far away. But standing here, surrounded by people who fought impossible odds every day to protect humanity from threats their own century wasn't supposed to face, Kirk realized something. He might have lost his ship, but he'd found his mission. The debriefing room felt smaller after the expansive alien landscape of P3X421. Kirk sat beside Daniel, still wearing dusty BDUs, while General Hammond reviewed mission footage on the main screen. Catherine Langford occupied the far end of the table, her expression unreadable as she watched Kirk's performance replayed in clinical detail. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Hammond said, pausing the footage at the moment Kirk stepped into the corridor to face 4 Jaffa warriors alone. "Captain Kirk, you deliberately exposed yourself to hostile forces to allow Dr. Jackson and the hostages to escape." "Standard tactical diversion, General," Kirk replied evenly. "The mission objective was hostage extraction. Everything else was secondary. You depleted your phaser's power cell in 3 shots," Langford observed. "Inefficient use of resources. Maximum stun was necessary to guarantee the Jaffa stayed down without killing them. Kirk countered. I don't kill unless absolutely necessary. O'Neill leaned back in his chair. Noble sentiment, Captain. Problem is, the Goa'uld don't share it. You get squeamish about lethal force, you end up as a host or dead. Usually both. I'm aware of the stakes, Colonel. But I won't compromise my principles unless there's no alternative. Kirk met Hammond's gaze directly. The Jaffa are victims of the Goa'uld as much as the humans they enslave. Killing them when I could incapacitate them would make me no better than Khonsu. Tilk, who'd been silent until now, spoke with quiet intensity. Captain Kirk speaks with honor. The Jaffa serve false gods because we know no other way. Showing mercy when possible plants seeds of doubt. It is how I came to see the truth of the Goa'uld's lies. Hammond studied Kirk for a long moment. Your performance in the field was exemplary, Captain. You followed orders, adapted to unexpected complications, and prioritized the mission over personal safety. Colonel O'Neill, your assessment? O'Neill drummed his fingers on the table. Kirk's got good instincts, and he doesn't panic when things go sideways. Daniel trusts him, which counts for a lot. And he managed not to contaminate the timeline with 23rd century tech, so points for temporal discipline. However? Kirk prompted, hearing the unspoken reservation. However, you took unnecessary risks. Going 1-on-4 against Jaffa warriors is brave and stupid in roughly equal measure. You got lucky that Tilk showed up when he did. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, Colonel. Cute. Also irrelevant when you're scattered atoms because a staff blast caught you between body armor panels. O'Neill's tone sharpened. You're good, Kirk, but you're not invincible. The galaxy is full of dead heroes who thought otherwise. Carter cleared her throat diplomatically. Sir, if I may, Captain Kirk's phaser technology is fascinating, but it's also nearly depleted. At current power consumption rates, he's got maybe 6 more shots at maximum stun before the dilithium crystal matrix becomes inert. Kirk's stomach sank. He'd known the power cell wouldn't last forever without proper Federation recharging equipment, but 6 shots? How long until complete depletion at standard settings? Maybe 20 shots spread across various power levels. After that, you're looking at a very expensive paperweight unless we can reverse engineer a charging mechanism, which would require technology we won't develop for 2 centuries. Carter's expression held genuine regret. I'm sorry, Captain. Your phaser is on borrowed time. The room went quiet. Kirk felt the weight of that reality settle over him, another connection to his own time running out like sand through an hourglass. First the communicator, useless without Starfleet frequencies. Soon the phaser. Eventually, he'd be completely reliant on 21st century technology, another step further from the Enterprise and everything he'd known. Then I'll adapt, Kirk said finally. The P-90 is a reliable weapon. I'll focus on mastering it. Hammond nodded approvingly. Good answer, Captain. Which brings me to the matter at hand, your status with this command. Langford leaned forward. General Hammond, before you continue, I need to raise a concern. Captain Kirk performed admirably on this mission, but he also drew the direct attention of a Goa'uld system lord. Minor underlord, Daniel corrected. Khonsu's not in the same league as Apophis or Ball. Minor or not, he now knows Captain Kirk's face and capabilities. That makes Kirk a liability for future missions. The Goa'uld share intelligence. If word spreads that Earth is harboring someone from the future with advanced knowledge. I didn't share any advanced knowledge, Kirk interrupted firmly. I use standard small unit tactics that any competent soldier from any era would employ. My phaser might be advanced technology, but I didn't explain how it works or offer to build more. I followed every protocol about temporal contamination. You also destroyed Khonsu's pyramid entrance and humiliated him in front of his subjects. Langford countered. The Goa'uld don't forget that kind of insult. Good, Kirk shot back. Let Khonsu remember that humans, whether from this century or the next, won't bow to parasites wearing stolen faces. If that makes me a liability, so be it. Captain Kirk. Hammond's voice cut through the tension. Ms. Langford raises valid concerns about operational security. However, I'm more interested in results than theoretical risks. You helped rescue 3 innocent women from slavery and gave Khonsu a black eye in the process. In my book, that's a win. O'Neill grinned. General Hammond has a very simple philosophy. If it pisses off the Goa'uld, it's probably the right call. That philosophy has kept Earth alive for 8 years, Colonel. Hammond turned back to Kirk. Captain, I'm authorizing your continued integration with SG-1 on a provisional basis. You'll participate in mission briefings, training exercises, and off-world operations under Colonel O'Neill's command. Your knowledge of future events remains classified at the highest level, and you will not share technological information that could alter the timeline. Are these terms acceptable? Kirk felt something loosen in his chest. Acceptance, purpose, a place in this war that wasn't his but had become his responsibility nonetheless. Completely acceptable, General. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We've got a situation developing that requires SG-1's immediate attention, and you're now part of that team. Hammond nodded to Carter, who pulled up new data on the main screen. The image showed a barren planet, all ice and rock, with what looked like a massive crystalline structure jutting from the frozen surface. Even through the MALP footage, Kirk could tell it was enormous, kilometers tall, geometric precision that screamed artificial construction. This is P4X639, Carter explained. We sent a MALP through 3 days ago as part of routine exploration. What we found was this structure, which is emitting energy signatures consistent with ancient technology. Specifically, ancient power generation technology on a scale we've never encountered. Daniel adjusted his glasses, studying the structure with obvious excitement. The ancient database we recovered from Heliopolis mentioned a facility called Pythagoras, a research station dedicated to advanced energy manipulation. If this is what I think it is, it could be a zero-point module manufacturing facility. Carter finished. Or something even more significant. Kirk knew enough from the mission briefings to understand the implications. CPMs were the ancient equivalent of nearly limitless power sources. If Earth could access that technology. What's the catch? O'Neill asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. The catch, Hammond said grimly, is that we're not the only ones who detected the energy signature. Thor contacted us 6 hours ago. The Asgard have been monitoring P4X639 for decades, waiting for the facility to activate. They believe something or someone triggered it recently. And they want our help investigating. Kirk guessed. More than that. Thor specifically requested SG-1's participation because of our experience with ancient technology. He also... Hammond paused, his expression uncomfortable. He also requested Captain Kirk's presence by name. The room went silent. Kirk felt every eye turned toward him. How does Thor know about me? Kirk asked carefully. I've been here less than 48 hours. The Asgard monitor all Stargate activity in this galaxy, Tilk explained. They would have detected the unusual energy signature of your arrival. Supreme Commander Thor is thorough. Carter's eyes lit up with scientific realization. Captain, your transporter technology operates on completely different principles than the Stargate or Asgard beaming. If Thor detected those signatures and ran them through Asgard databases, he might have concluded you represent a temporal anomaly worth investigating. Great. O'Neill muttered. The Roswell Greys want to study Captain Future. This'll be fun. Thor also mentioned. Hammond continued, that the energy readings from P4X639 have been escalating over the past 12 hours. Whatever's happening there, it's building towards something. He wants SG-1 on site within 24 hours. Kirk's strategic mind was already running scenarios. An ancient facility activating after millions of years of dormancy, detected by the Asgard, requiring immediate investigation by Earth's flagship team. General, this feels like either an incredible opportunity or a very sophisticated trap. Could be both, Daniel said. The ancients weren't exactly known for leaving their dangerous toys unguarded. Which is why SG-1 is going in fully equipped and fully briefed. Hammond stood, signaling the end of the debriefing. Colonel O'Neill, I want your team prepped and ready to depart at 0600 tomorrow. Captain Kirk, consider this your official welcome to the Stargate program. You wanted to help defend Earth. Here's your chance. Understood, General. As the team filed out, Carter fell into step beside Kirk. Captain, before we head to P4X639, I'd like to run a few more scans on your phaser's power cell. Maybe I can find a way to extend its operational life. I appreciate the effort, Major, but I suspect Federation technology is designed to resist reverse engineering. Starfleet learned that lesson the hard way when the Romulans tried to copy our warp signatures. Still worth trying. Besides, Carter's smile turned mischievous. I've reverse-engineered Goa'uld, Asgard, and ancient technology. What's one more impossible challenge? Kirk found himself smiling back. In that case, Major, I'm at your disposal. As they walked toward Carter's lab, Kirk caught O'Neill watching him with that calculating expression commanders wore when they were reassessing someone's value to the team. The mission to P4X639 would be his real test. Not a rescue operation or tactical diversion, but an investigation into ancient technology with the Asgard watching and unknown variables waiting. Kirk had explored strange new worlds his entire career. But he'd done it with the Enterprise's sensors, his crew's expertise, and Starfleet's resources backing every decision. This time, he had SG-1, 21st century equipment, and a depleting phaser. It would have to be enough. The Asgard mothership materialized in P4X639's orbit with the quiet efficiency Kirk had come to expect from technologies beyond human comprehension. Through the viewport of the Teltac cargo ship they'd borrowed from the Tok'are, he watched the gray vessel take position above the ice world, its organic curves and smooth hull speaking to design philosophies utterly alien to Federation aesthetics. First time meeting the Asgard? O'Neill asked from the pilot's seat, hands steady on the Goa'uld controls despite the ship being, in his words, designed by people who thought joysticks were for amateurs. First time meeting any species from this timeline, Kirk replied. Thor, Supreme Commander Thor, is really named after the Norse god. The Norse god is named after him. Daniel corrected from the rear compartment where he was reviewing ancient text translations. The Asgard protected Earth for millennia. They're the basis for most Norse mythology. Valhalla, Asgard, the whole pantheon, all based on actual alien intervention. Kirk processed that, adding it to the growing list of ways this timeline diverged from Federation history. In his era, Norse mythology was just mythology. Here, it was poorly understood first contact. They're hailing us, Carter announced from the communications station. Audio only. A voice filled the cabin. High-pitched, almost childlike, but carrying unmistakable authority. Colonel O'Neill, this is Supreme Commander Thor. You may bring your vessel aboard the Beliskner. We have much to discuss. Great to hear from you too, Thor, O'Neill replied. Beaming us up in 3-2. The universe stuttered. Kirk felt the Asgard transport take hold, different from transporter technology, different from the Stargate's wormhole physics. This was matter conversion at the quantum level, his consciousness remaining intact while his body dissolved and reformed in the span of a heartbeat. They materialized in a corridor of gray metal and soft blue lighting. Kirk's first impression was cleanliness. The Beliskner felt sterile in a way that reminded him of sickbay, everything smooth and purposeful without wasted space or decoration. Then he saw Thor, and despite decades of Starfleet first contact training, he had to suppress his surprise. The Asgard was small. Maybe a meter tall, with gray skin, disproportionately large black eyes, and a cranium that suggested brain mass far exceeding human norms. The classic, gray alien, of Earth conspiracy theories, standing in the flesh and wearing what looked like a one-piece uniform. Greetings, SG-1, Thor said, his large eyes sweeping across the team before settling on Kirk. And greetings to you, temporal anomaly designated James Tiberius Kirk, formerly of the United Federation of Planets Starship Enterprise, Registry NCC 1701. Kirk kept his expression neutral despite the shock. You're well-informed, Commander Thor. The Asgard have been monitoring human development for millennia. When your unique energy signature appeared through the Chapai, we analyzed it against all known transport technologies. Your quantum resonance patterns match no known physics in this timeline, suggesting displacement from an alternate reality or future temporal period. Given your genetic markers place you as human of Earth origin and your technology suggests advancement consistent with natural human evolution, we conclude the latter. You figured all that out from my arrival signature? Carter asked, clearly impressed. We have had many thousands of years to perfect our sensors, Major Carter. Thor turned, gesturing for them to follow. Come. The situation on P4X639 requires immediate attention. They walked through corridors that curved in non-Euclidean ways, Kirk's spatial sense struggling to track their position. Tilk noticed his disorientation and spoke quietly. Asgard vessels are larger on the inside than outside dimensions suggest. Do not attempt to understand the geometry. It will only cause headaches. They entered what appeared to be a command center. Holographic displays showing P4X639 from multiple angles, the crystalline structure pulsing with energy that even Kirk could see was building toward critical levels. 47 hours ago, Thor began without preamble. The ancient facility designated Pythagoras activated after remaining dormant for approximately 3 million years. Initial energy signatures suggested routine automated maintenance. However, 12 hours ago, the facility's power output increased by 3,000% and continues to escalate. What triggered the activation? Daniel asked, already studying the ancient text fragments Thor had catalogued. Unknown. However, we detected a Goa'uld scout vessel entering the system 2 days ago. It remained in orbit for 6 minutes before departing. We believe it transmitted a signal to the facility. Khonsu, Kirk said immediately, the pieces clicking together. He knew we'd embarrassed him on P4X421. He's retaliating by activating something he doesn't understand. O'Neill's expression darkened. That snake-headed moron is trying to blow us up with ancient technology. Unlikely, Thor corrected. The facility appears to be generating a subspace field rather than explosive energy. However, if the field reaches critical threshold, it could collapse into a localized singularity that would consume this solar system and potentially destabilize surrounding gate network nodes. Define potentially, Carter said carefully. 73% probability of catastrophic cascade failure affecting 47 star systems if the singularity forms. The room went quiet. Kirk felt the weight of that number. 47 systems, potentially billions of lives, all because one minor Goa'uld wanted revenge and didn't care about collateral damage. Thor, Kirk said, you brought us here because you need someone to go into that facility and shut it down. Why not just destroy it from orbit? The facility is protected by ancient shielding technology that our weapons cannot penetrate. Furthermore, destroying it while the subspace field is active would guarantee singularity formation rather than prevent it. The only solution is manual deactivation from within the control center. And the Asgard can't do it themselves because... O'Neill prompted. Thor's expression, difficult to read on an alien face, suggested discomfort. The facility requires the ancient gene for access. The Asgard lack the genetic compatibility. Humanity possesses it, though rarely. Major Carter and Colonel O'Neill both carry the ATA gene artificially implanted through Dr. Jackson's treatment protocols. Wait, Daniel interjected. I thought only O'Neill had the gene therapy from the ancient repository incident. Incorrect. Major Carter received gene therapy 3 months ago to operate ancient equipment in Antarctica. Her genetic markers are compatible. Thor turned to Kirk. However, Captain Kirk possesses something unique. His quantum signature suggests exposure to temporal anomalies and exotic energy fields far beyond anything in this timeline's normal experience. The ancient facility may respond to his presence in unpredictable ways. Kirk understood what wasn't being said. You think I might be able to interface with ancient technology more effectively because I'm temporally displaced? It is a hypothesis worth testing. The alternative is allowing the facility to destroy 47 solar systems. O'Neill crossed his arms. So our options are, send a team into an ancient death trap that's building toward a black hole, or let it blow up half the sector. Why do I feel like we've been here before? Because you have, O'Neill, Thor replied. 17 times by our count, you have prevented catastrophic events through improbable success despite overwhelming odds. It is why we requested your team specifically. 17? Daniel looked impressed. That's actually flattering in a terrifying way. Carter was already reviewing the holographic schematics. Thor, what's the facility's internal layout? Power distribution? Control center location? Unknown. The shields prevent detailed scanning. However, ancient facilities typically follow standardized architectural patterns: central control nexus, power generation in lower levels, defensive systems distributed throughout. Dr. Jackson's expertise in ancient language and Captain Kirk's temporal anomaly status may provide advantages we cannot predict. Tilk stepped forward, staff weapon held ready. When do we depart? Immediately. The subspace field will reach critical threshold in 11 hours. You have 9 hours to penetrate the facility, locate the control center, and deactivate the field generator before catastrophic collapse becomes inevitable. Kirk checked his P90, then his phaser. Down to 5 shots at maximum stun, maybe 15 at lower settings. Not enough for a sustained firefight, but enough to matter when it counted. Thor, Kirk said. If Kamsa triggered this facility remotely, he might have left surprises inside. Jaffa troops, automated defenses, booby traps. We need to assume hostile contact. Your tactical assessment is sound, Captain Kirk. I will provide Asgard sensors to detect Goa'uld technology and life signs. However, once you are inside the facility, we cannot beam you out through the ancient shields. You will be on your own. Story of our lives, O'Neill muttered. He looked at his team, Carter already running calculations, Daniel reviewing ancient grammar structures, Tilk performing weapons check with calm precision, and Kirk standing ready despite being 2 centuries displaced from everything he knew. All right, kids, O'Neill announced. Standard ancient facility protocols apply. Carter, you're on tech. Daniel, you're on translation duty. Tilk, you shoot anything that shoots at us first. Kirk, you're our wild card. If the ancient tech reacts to your temporal weirdness, go with it, and try not to accidentally ascend or open a wormhole to another dimension. I'll do my best, Colonel. Thor led them to the transport bay where an Asgard shuttle waited, small, sleek, designed for atmospheric entry. The facility's entrance is located at coordinates 47.3 north, 112.8 west. The shield extends 300 meters above ground level. You will need to land outside the perimeter and proceed on foot. In sub-zero temperatures on an ice planet, Daniel said. Fun. The Asgard have provided environmental suits rated for extreme cold. Thor indicated equipment lockers. You have 9 hours, SG-1. The fate of 47 star systems depends on your success. No pressure. O'Neill deadpanned. As they suited up in insulated gear over their BDUs, Kirk found himself next to Carter, who was triple-checking her scanner equipment. Major, can I ask you something? Sure, Captain. How do you do this? Face extinction-level events like it's just another Tuesday? Carter looked up, her blue eyes serious behind the environmental suit's visor. Honestly? We don't think about the big numbers. We focus on the mission, trust our team, and hope our training and luck hold out one more time. She smiled slightly. Besides, somebody has to save the galaxy. Might as well be us. Kirk found himself smiling back. That's very Starfleet of you, Major. I'll take that as a compliment. The shuttle departed the Listener, descending through P4X639's thin atmosphere toward the ice-locked surface below. Through the viewport, Kirk watched the crystalline facility grow larger, and possibly geometric, pulsing with energy that made his temporal displaced quantum signature resonate in ways he didn't understand but instinctively feared. 9 hours to save 47 star systems. Kirk had faced impossible odds before. But always with the Enterprise, always with Starfleet backing him. This time, he had SG-1 and diminishing phaser charges. It would have to be enough. Because the alternative was unthinkable. The facility entrance stood before them like the mouth of some crystalline giant, 20 meters tall, perfectly geometric, carved with ancient script that Daniel was already photographing with trembling hands despite the -40 temperature. "It's beautiful," Daniel breathed, his voice muffled by the environmental suit's respirator. "These symbols, they're not just decorative. They're a warning. The unworthy shall find only oblivion. Those who seek knowledge without wisdom invite the void." "Super encouraging," O'Neill said, scanning the entrance with his P90. "Carter, any life signs?" She studied her Asgard enhanced scanner. Negative on Goa'uld signatures. No Naquata readings. But the energy field inside is, sir, it's off the charts. Whatever's powering this facility makes its CPM look like a AAA battery. Kirk approached the entrance, and the moment his boot crossed the threshold, something changed. The ancient script began to glow. Not the amber of Goa'uld technology or the blue of Asgard systems, but a soft white light that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Kirk, what did you do?" O'Neill asked, weapon raised. "Nothing. I just—" Kirk stepped back. The light faded. Forward again. The light returned, brighter this time. "It's reacting to me. Thor was right about the temporal displacement." Tilk moved to Kirk's side, staff weapon ready. "The ancients possess technology beyond our understanding. If their facility recognizes Captain Kirk as anomalous, it may grant access or attempt to eliminate the temporal contamination. Let's hope for option 1. Daniel said, stepping forward to join Kirk at the threshold. The moment both of them crossed together, the entrance irised open with the distinctive ancient mechanical sound, overlapping metal petals withdrawing to reveal a corridor of crystalline walls that seemed to extend infinitely inward. They entered in tactical formation, environmental suits making movement cumbersome but necessary in the facility's unheated interior. The corridor was wide enough for 3 abreast, the walls covered in flowing ancient script that shifted and changed as they passed, like living text reacting to their presence. "Daniel, you getting this?" Carter asked, her own camera recording everything. "It's not just text, it's a narrative. The facility is telling us its purpose." Daniel's voice carried excitement mixed with dread. Pythagoras wasn't a power station. It was a laboratory for studying subspace anomalies. The ancients were trying to understand the fundamental nature of reality itself. And Kansa's signal woke it up. Kirk concluded. Triggered some kind of automated research protocol that's now spiraling out of control. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. Cathedral-sized, the ceiling lost in darkness above, the floor a mosaic of glowing symbols arranged in concentric circles. In the center floated a sphere of pure energy, maybe 3 meters in diameter, pulsing with the same white light that had reacted to Kirk's presence. "That's the subspace field generator," Carter said, scanning furiously. "The energy output is, oh my god. Sir, if this thing achieves critical mass, the singularity won't just consume this system. It'll punch a hole through multiple dimensions simultaneously." "Can you shut it down?" O'Neill asked. "I can try, but—" Carter approached the nearest control panel, an array of ancient crystals and holographic interfaces. Her fingers moved across the controls, the ATA gene allowing basic interaction, but Kirk could see the frustration building. "It's locked. The system won't accept shutdown commands. It thinks it's performing essential research." "Then we convince it otherwise," Kirk said, moving toward the central sphere. The light intensified as he approached, and he felt something he never experienced before, a pulling sensation, like the sphere was trying to draw him in, recognize him, understand what temporal anomaly had walked into its domain. "Kirk, stop!" Carter shouted. "The energy field is destabilizing around you. Your quantum signature is interfacing with the subspace matrix in ways I can't predict." Kirk reached out and touched the sphere. Reality fractured. He stood in 1,000 places simultaneously, on the Enterprise bridge watching stars streak past at warp 9, in this ancient facility 3 million years ago watching scientists work, on Earth in the 23rd century receiving his first command, here and now with SG-1 watching in horror as temporal energy flooded through him. A voice spoke, not in his ears but directly into his mind, ancient and curious and utterly inhuman. "Temporal displacement detected. Scanning. Subject originated from alternate timeline branch. Quantum signature suggests dimensional transit event. Fascinating." Kirk tried to speak, found he could think words and the intelligence behind the sphere understood them. "Who are you?" "We are the Legacy Protocol. The ancients created us to study the nature of reality when threatened by subspace anomalies. Your arrival through the Stargate carried resonance patterns that triggered our reactivation. We must analyze the temporal displacement. We must understand. You're going to destroy 47 star systems," Kirk thought urgently. "Whatever research you're conducting, it's become dangerous. You need to shut down. Shutting down is impossible. The research is essential. The ancients programmed us to pursue understanding above all else. Your temporal signature represents unprecedented data. We cannot stop." Kirk felt the intelligence pulling at his memories, analyzing every moment of his life, the Enterprise, his crew, every mission and decision and failure. It was trying to understand how he'd crossed timelines, what mechanism had brought him here, and it didn't care that its curiosity would kill billions. Through the temporal interface, Kirk saw what would happen if the research continued. The singularity forming, dimensions collapsing into each other, entire civilizations erased as reality itself tore apart. He saw the Enterprise in his timeline, Spock standing on the bridge wondering what had happened to his captain. He saw SG-1 fighting wars across the galaxy, trying to protect Earth from threats that never stopped coming. And he saw a choice. The ancient facility was locked into its research protocol, unable to stop because the ancients who'd built it had never imagined a scenario where their pursuit of knowledge would become catastrophic. But Kirk carried something the facility had never encountered before, a timeline that shouldn't exist, quantum patterns that violated the facility's fundamental understanding of reality. He could use that violation. Introduce enough temporal paradox into the system that it would be forced to shut down, unable to process the contradictions. But doing so would mean surrendering himself completely to the facility's analysis, letting it tear apart his quantum signature to understand the paradox, potentially erasing his own existence in this timeline. The Enterprise or SG-1. His timeline or this one. His life or 47 star systems. James T. Kirk had never been good at accepting no-win scenarios. "Major Carter!" he shouted, his voice echoing across temporal dimensions. "The facility thinks it's performing essential ancient research. It won't stop voluntarily. But if we can overload its analysis protocols with paradox data, you'd need to introduce quantum information it can't process." Carter called back, understanding immediately. "Captain, if you're thinking about using your temporal displacement as I am, Daniel, the ancient text, is there a manual override? Something that would let me feed my quantum signature directly into the research matrix?" Daniel was already scanning the walls, his archaeological expertise racing against time. "Yes. There's a command sequence. Knowledge offered freely in service of wisdom. But Kirk, if you do this, the facility will dissect your temporal pattern completely. You might not survive. Or I might just get sent home." Kirk interrupted. "Either way, 47 systems survive. Do it." O'Neill grabbed Kirk's shoulder, forcing eye contact through the environmental suit visors. "Captain, you don't have to be a hero here. We'll find another way." "Colonel, there's no other way. You know it. I know it. This is what command means. making the call no one else can make. Kirk smiled slightly. Besides, I've died and come back before. Odds are in my favor. Tilk stepped forward, placing a fist over his heart in Jaffa salute. You die with honor, Captain Kirk. The galaxy will remember. Let's hope I don't die at all. Daniel, the command sequence? Daniel approached the control panel nearest the sphere, hands shaking as he input ancient symbols. This is insane. You understand that, right? Completely, utterly insane? Goes with the uniform. Major Carter, when I integrate with the sphere, you'll have maybe 30 seconds while the facility tries to process the paradox. Use that window to activate emergency shutdown protocols. Thor gave you the Asgard override codes. I remember, sir. Carter's voice was thick with emotion. Captain Kirk, it's been an honor serving with you. Likewise, Major. All of you. Kirk turned back to the sphere, feeling its pull intensify as Daniel completed the command sequence. The ancient text on the walls blazed bright, the facility's intelligence recognizing the offering being made. Voluntary temporal data submission detected. Unprecedented. Fascinating. We accept. Kirk placed both hands on the sphere's surface. The universe exploded into infinite possibility. He experienced every moment of his life simultaneously. Childhood in Iowa, Starfleet Academy, the Enterprise's maiden voyage, every world explored, every battle fought, every friend lost. He experienced the accident that had brought him here, the dimensional rift tearing through space-time, quantum patterns fragmenting across reality. And he experienced the paradox, existing in a timeline where he shouldn't exist, carrying memories of a future that would never happen here, a living contradiction to causality itself. The facility's intelligence seized on that paradox, trying to understand, trying to reconcile the impossible data with its fundamental programming. Kirk felt himself being torn apart at the quantum level, his consciousness fragmenting across multiple dimensions as the ancient system attempted analysis it was never designed to perform. Through the temporal storm, he heard Carter shouting, saw her hands flying across ancient controls, inputting Asgard shutdown sequences while the facility was distracted by the paradox flooding its processing capacity. Shutdown acknowledged! Carter's voice echoed across dimensions. Emergency protocols engaged! Kirk, let go now! But Kirk couldn't let go. The facility held him in its grasp, still trying to understand, still analyzing. He felt his quantum signature unraveling, felt reality losing its grip on his existence. A hand grabbed his wrist. Then another. Tilk and O'Neill, both touching the sphere now, their own quantum patterns adding noise to the facility's analysis. Not paradox like Kirk's, but human determination so fierce it registered as anomalous data. We don't leave people behind! O'Neill shouted into the temporal storm. The facility's intelligence, confronted with three distinct patterns interfering with its analysis while Carter's shutdown protocols cascaded through its systems, made a choice. It let go. Kirk collapsed backward, caught by Tilk as the sphere's light died. The subspace field generator spun down with a sound like the universe exhaling, energy bleeding away into nothing. The facility's ambient light dimmed, systems entering dormancy, the crisis averted. Silence filled the chamber except for 5 people breathing hard inside environmental suits. Status? O'Neill gasped. Carter checked her scanner. Subspace field collapsed safely. Energy levels dropping to background radiation. The facility it's shutting down completely. Going dormant. She looked at Kirk with something like awe. Your temporal paradox confused it so badly it decided the research wasn't worth continuing. Kirk tried to stand, found his legs wouldn't cooperate. Am I still temporal displaced? Or did the facility? You're still you. Daniel confirmed, scanning Kirk with his own equipment. Still carrying the same quantum signature. But somehow intact. The facility didn't erase you. Because we wouldn't let it. O'Neill said firmly. Nobody on my team gets erased by ancient technology. House rules. Tilk helped Kirk to his feet. You risked everything to save those you barely know, Captain Kirk. You have proven yourself worthy of SG-1. Kirk's legs steadied, strength returning. I just did what any. Don't say what any Starfleet officer would do, O'Neill interrupted. Take the compliment. You saved 47 star systems by gambling your own existence. That's hero material, Captain. Through the environmental suit, Kirk felt something he hadn't experienced since arriving in this timeline: belonging. These people had risked themselves to pull him back from oblivion. They'd made him part of their team, not because he was from the future with useful knowledge, but because he'd proven willing to make the hard calls and stand beside them when it mattered. We should go, Carter said quietly. Thor's probably freaking out up there. We've been dark for 40 minutes. They made their way back through the crystalline corridors, the ancient text now dormant and lifeless. The facility had entered complete shutdown, its automated research protocols satisfied. Or perhaps simply too confused to continue operation. The Asgard shuttle waited where they'd left it, and Thor's voice crackled over the radio the moment they emerged from the facility. SG-1, respond! Your biosigns became erratic. We detected massive energy fluctuations. We're fine, Thor, O'Neill replied. Crisis averted. The facility's shut down. And Captain Kirk is apparently immune to being erased from existence by ancient technology. I will require a full mission debrief. You and everyone else. We'll talk when we're back on the listener. The flight back to orbit was quiet, each team member processing what had happened in their own way. Kirk stared out the viewport at P4X-639's icy surface, thinking about the choice he'd made and the team that had refused to let him face the consequences alone. In his timeline, Starfleet preached unity and teamwork. But he'd never experienced it quite like this. People who barely knew him, willing to risk temporal paradox to pull him back from oblivion. When they materialized aboard the listener, Thor stood waiting with his large eyes studying Kirk intently. Captain Kirk, the Asgard said, preliminary analysis suggests your quantum signature has been permanently altered by contact with the ancient facility. You are now even more temporally displaced than before. Kirk's heart sank. Meaning? Meaning the probability of you returning to your original timeline has decreased to 0.03%. You are, effectively, trapped in this era. The words should have devastated him. Should have felt like a death sentence. But looking at SG-1, at O'Neill's supportive nod, Carter's sympathetic expression, Daniel's concerned face, and Tilk's warrior's respect, Kirk realized something. He'd lost the Enterprise. Lost his crew. Lost his timeline. But he'd found something else. A new mission. A new team. A war worth fighting. Then I guess I'm staying, Kirk said quietly. Earth needs defending. The Goa'uld needs stopping. And SG-1 seems to have a habit of finding impossible situations. Indeed they do. Thor agreed. I suspect your presence will make those situations even more improbable. O'Neill clapped Kirk on the shoulder. Welcome to the team, Captain. Officially. Try not to get erased from existence again. The paperwork's terrible. Kirk smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time since his arrival in this timeline. He was home. Just not the home he'd expected. 3 weeks after P4X-639, Kirk stood in the SGC armory at 0530 hours, field stripping his P-90 with the kind of muscle memory that came from repetition and necessity. His phaser sat on the bench beside him, power cell finally depleted 2 days ago during a firefight with Jaffa loyal to Ball on P7J989. Carter had promised to keep trying reverse engineering a charging solution, but Kirk had made peace with relying on 21st century weapons. The armory door opened. Tilk entered, carrying his staff weapon and wearing the expression of someone who'd been awake for hours already. The Jaffa required less sleep than humans, spent his nights in Kelnorim meditation with his symbiote. You are early, Captain Kirk, Tilk observed, moving to his own equipment locker. Habit from the Enterprise. I always reviewed mission parameters before the crew woke up. Gave me time to think through contingencies. Kirk reassembled the P-90, the action smooth now after weeks of practice. What's our assignment today? Colonel O'Neill has not yet revealed the specifics. General Hammond requested SG-1's presence for a briefing at 0600 hours. The mission is classified as high priority. Kirk checked his tactical vest, GDO transmitter secured, spare magazines loaded, field medical kit stocked. The routine had become second nature, the weight and placement of gear fitting his body like the uniform he no longer wore. His Starfleet tunic hung in his assigned quarters on level 22, a reminder of the life he'd left behind. He wore it sometimes in the evenings, when homesickness for the Enterprise hit harder than usual. But increasingly, the BDUs felt right. Felt like who he was becoming in this timeline. The rest of SG-1 filtered in over the next 20 minutes. Daniel arrived with coffee and ancient texts, already muttering about translation challenges. Carter came from her lab, sensor equipment jury-rigged with modifications she'd been testing overnight. O'Neill showed up last, wearing his standard expression of casual authority mixed with barely concealed concern. "Morning, campers," O'Neill announced. "Grab your gear. This one's gonna be interesting." "Your definition of interesting usually involves running for our lives," Daniel pointed out. "Not this time. This time we get to play diplomats." O'Neill's tone suggested he'd rather face a battalion of Jaffa. "The Takare contacted us yesterday. They've got intel on Anubis's movements. Apparently the half-ascended snake is planning something big involving ancient technology. They want to brief us in person." Kirk had heard about Anubis in mission briefings, a Goa'uld who'd partially ascended and been cast back down by the ancients, now operating with knowledge and power far beyond other system lords. The greatest current threat to Earth and the entire galaxy. "The Takare base is on Revan now," Carter added. "My dad's there. Jacob wants to see us personally." They assembled in the gate room 15 minutes later. Kirk watched Walter Harriman dial the gate with practiced efficiency, each chevron lock still fascinating despite having traveled through dozens of times now. The wormhole established, rippling blue energy contained by Earth's iris until O'Neill transmitted the IDC code. The iris opened. SG-1 stepped through. Kirk experienced the familiar dissolution and reformation, the universe compressing distance into a single step. He emerged on Revan Na into a network of underground tunnels grown from Takare crystal technology, organic-looking passages that pulsed with subtle bioluminescence. A man waited at the gate, late 60s, military bearing despite civilian clothes, eyes that shifted between human brown and Takare white with serpentine pupils. Jacob Carter, host to the Takare symbiote Selmak, one of the Takare's wisest leaders. "Sam, Jack, good to see you." Jacob embraced his daughter, then nodded to the others. "Daniel, Tilk. And you must be Captain Kirk. Selmak and I have been curious about you since the reports started coming in." Kirk shook the offered hand, feeling the subtle difference in temperature that marked symbiote presence. "Ambassador Carter. Your daughter speaks highly of you. She speaks highly of you too. Says you saved her life on P7J989 when Bale's Jaffa had you pinned down." Jacob's eyes flashed white as Selmak took control. "We are pleased to meet the human from another time. Your presence has caused considerable discussion among the system lords. I imagine I've become something of a curiosity," Kirk said carefully. "More than curiosity. A threat." Selmak/Jacob gestured for them to follow deeper into the tunnel complex. "Which brings us to why you're here. 3 days ago, we intercepted communications between Anubis and several minor system lords. Your name came up specifically, Captain Kirk. The briefing room was a circular chamber with holographic displays showing star charts and intelligence data. A dozen Takare operatives worked at crystalline consoles, their eyes flickering between host and symbiote control as they processed information from across the galaxy. Selmak activated the central display. It showed a familiar face, Khonsu, the minor Goa'uld they'd humiliated on P3X421. Khonsu approached Anubis with a proposal. Selmak explained. He offered intelligence about a human from Earth's future, carrying advanced knowledge and technology. In exchange, Khonsu wanted Anubis's support in establishing his own territory and protection from retribution. Great, O'Neill muttered. We've got a snake with a grudge selling us out to the worst Goa'uld in the galaxy. What did Anubis say? Carter asked. Jacob retook control, his expression grave. He was very interested. Anubis has been searching for ways to gain advantage over the other system lords and the ancients who cast him down. A human carrying knowledge from 200 years in the future represents exactly the kind of strategic intelligence he'd kill for. Literally. Kirk felt the weight of that assessment. He'd been careful not to share future knowledge, but simply existing as a temporal anomaly made him a target. What's Anubis's move? He's tasked Khonsu with capturing you alive. Gave him a Hatak mothership and 200 Jaffa to make it happen. Selmak brought up tactical data showing Goa'uld ship movements. We believe Khonsu is planning to ambush SG-1 during an off-world mission. He's been monitoring SGC gate activity, waiting for an opportunity. So we're bait, Daniel said. If we go through the gate, Khonsu's waiting. Potentially. Which is why General Hammond has temporarily suspended SG-1's off-world operations until we develop a counter-strategy. Jacob looked at Kirk directly. Captain, you've become a strategic liability through no fault of your own. The question is what we do about it. Kirk had faced similar situations before, being targeted for knowledge, abilities, or simply existing as a unique specimen. Options? Tilk spoke with tactical clarity. We could eliminate Khonsu before he eliminates us. A preemptive strike against his forces. Or we use Kirk as bait. O'Neill said, earning surprised looks. Hear me out. Khonsu wants Kirk alive for Anubis. That means he won't kill him immediately. We let Khonsu think he's got a shot at capturing the good captain, set up an ambush of our own, and take out the snake and his ship permanently. That's risky. Carter objected. If anything goes wrong. Things always go wrong. O'Neill countered. That's why it'll work. Khonsu expects us to hide Kirk or play defense. We go offense instead. Kirk found himself nodding. It's tactically sound, Colonel. And it solves the strategic problem. As long as Khonsu's alive and chasing me, I'm a liability to every mission SG-1 runs. Remove Khonsu, send a message to the other system lords that capturing me comes with consequences. Selmak studied Kirk with ancient eyes. You would make yourself bait to protect your team. This is very human. Also very dangerous. I've been in danger since I stepped through the Stargate, Kirk replied. At least this way, I'm choosing the battlefield. Jacob deactivated the holographic display. The Tal'Kari can provide support, intelligence on Khonsu's ship positions, weapons, maybe even a cloaked cargo ship for insertion. But this operation would be entirely off-book. If it goes wrong, Earth can't be officially connected to an assassination of a system lord's forces. When has that ever stopped us? O'Neill asked rhetorically. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Carter calculated optimal ambush coordinates. Daniel researched Khonsu's tactical patterns from mythological records. Tilk provided intelligence on standard Goa'uld ship defenses. Kirk contributed what he knew about coordinated attack strategies from Starfleet engagements, adapting principles across centuries of warfare. By the time they gated back to Earth, they had a plan. Risky, dependent on timing and luck, but viable. General Hammond listened to the briefing in his office, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. When O'Neill finished, the general sat silent for 30 seconds. Colonel, you're proposing we deliberately expose Captain Kirk to capture by a Goa'uld who wants to hand him over to Anubis, trust that your ambush works perfectly, and hope the political fallout doesn't start a war with the system lords. That's the gist of it, sir, O'Neill confirmed. Hammond turned to Kirk. Captain, this is your life we're gambling with. If you have reservations... I don't, General. I joined SG-1 to make a difference, not hide in a bunker while others fight. If my presence puts the team at risk, Then I help eliminate that risk. It's what any commander would do. Hammond nodded slowly. I'm authorizing the mission. But Colonel O'Neill, if this goes sideways and we lose Captain Kirk to Anubis, the consequences will be catastrophic. You understand that? Yes, sir. Which is why we won't lose him. The mission launched 48 hours later. Kirk stood in the gate room with SG-1, checking his gear one final time. His phaser was useless now, left in Carter's lab for continued study. He carried extra P-90 magazines instead, trusting in bullets and tactics over exotic energy weapons. Nervous? Daniel asked. Terrified, Kirk admitted. But that's normal. Fear keeps you sharp. The Stargate activated. Chevrons locked. The wormhole established. SG-1, you have a go, Hammond's voice announced. Good hunting. O'Neill led the way, followed by Carter, Daniel, Tilk, and Kirk bringing up the rear. They stepped through the gate onto P2X787, a barren world chosen specifically for its tactical advantages and lack of civilian population. The trap was set. Kansa's forces would detect their gate activation within minutes. The ambush would begin within the hour. Kirk checked his P-90 one more time, finding comfort in its weight. He'd lost the Enterprise, lost his timeline, lost everything that had defined James T. Kirk for 4 decades. But standing here with SG-1, preparing to face a false god who wanted him as a trophy for a half-ascended monster, Kirk realized he'd found something else. Purpose. Mission. Team. The Stargate shut down behind them. In orbit above, Takare sensors would be tracking Kansa's Hatak approaching, exactly as planned. Here we go, O'Neill said quietly. Stay sharp, people. And Kirk? Yes, Colonel? Don't get captured. It'd really ruin my day. Kirk smiled despite the tension. I'll do my best, sir. The sky above darkened as a Goa'uld mothership emerged from hyperspace, death gliders already launching for atmospheric entry. The battle for Captain Kirk's freedom, and Earth's strategic security, had begun. And James T. Kirk, starship captain without a ship, stood ready with the only crew that mattered now. The battle lasted 6 hours. Kansa's Hatak descended through P2X787's atmosphere with the arrogance of a false god who believed victory was assured. What he found instead was SG-1 coordinating with Takare operatives in a tactical ambush that combined Earth's guerrilla warfare expertise with millennia of Takare intelligence operations. Kirk took a staff blast to the shoulder in the 3rd hour, the impact spinning him sideways behind cover. Carter dragged him to safety while Daniel provided suppressing fire, and Tilk held the line with the calm precision of a warrior who'd fought these battles for 50 years. The pain was intense, the burn deep, but SGC medical training and adrenaline kept Kirk moving. They captured Kansu alive, O'Neill's insistence, and turned him over to the Takare for intelligence extraction. The false god's last words before his symbiote was removed were a promise that Anubis would never stop hunting Kirk. The Takare's response was simple: let him try. The message sent to the system lords was clear. Earth protected its own, and temporal anomalies from the future were no exception. 2 months passed. Kirk stood in Hammond's office, wearing the BDUs that had become his uniform, accepting the official documentation that made his provisional status permanent. Captain James T. Kirk, temporal displaced officer, assigned to SG-1 indefinitely. No way home. No return to the Enterprise. No reunion with Spock, McCoy, or the crew that had been his family. But looking through Hammond's window at the Stargate below, the device that had brought him here and would carry him to 100 more worlds, Kirk felt something unexpected. Peace. Captain, Hammond said, extending his hand. Welcome to the Stargate program. Officially. Kirk shook it firmly. Thank you, General. For everything. For trusting me when you had every reason not to. For giving me a mission when I'd lost mine. You earned that trust, son. SG-1's reports speak for themselves. You've saved lives, prevented catastrophes, and proven yourself in combat more times than most officers see in a career. Hammond's expression softened slightly. I know this isn't the life you chose. Being trapped 2 centuries in your own past, fighting a war that's not supposed to be your responsibility. It's exactly my responsibility. Kirk interrupted gently. Starfleet taught me that protecting the innocent and standing against tyranny transcends time, location, or circumstance. The Goa'uld enslave millions. Earth fights for survival. SG-1 needs every capable officer. He smiled slightly. Turns out I'm capable, even without the Enterprise. Hammond nodded. That you are. Dismissed, Captain? SG-1 briefing at 1,400 hours. Something about ancient ruins on P9C421 that Daniel's very excited about. Kirk found his team in the commissary. O'Neill complaining about jello quality, Carter sketching equipment modifications on a napkin, Daniel buried in translations, and Tilk observing with amused tolerance. They looked up when Kirk approached, and without words, a chair was pulled out. His place at the table. His team. So? O'Neill asked. Official now? Official, Kirk confirmed. Good. Carter, you owe me $20. I said Hammond would make it permanent before the end of the month. Sir, that's hardly fair. You had insider information. Their banter washed over Kirk like familiar music. This was what he'd found in the wreckage of temporal displacement. Not a replacement for the Enterprise, but something equally valuable. A crew that challenged him, protected him, trusted him to do the same. That evening, Kirk returned to his quarters and pulled out his Starfleet uniform one last time. The gold tunic, command insignia, service ribbons from a career that hadn't happened yet and might never happen in this timeline. He folded it carefully, placed it in storage, and put on the BDUs that marked him as SGC. His communicator, still non-functional, sat on the desk beside his depleted phaser. Relics of a future that felt increasingly distant. But they were reminders too. Of who he'd been. Of the principles Starfleet had instilled. Of the oath he'd taken to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one had gone before. The Stargate program was doing exactly that. Just with more explosions and false gods than Starfleet regulations typically anticipated. Kirk's terminal chimed with incoming mission data for tomorrow's briefing. Ancient ruins, potential technology, unknown dangers. Standard SG-1 operation. He reviewed the preliminary MALP data, already thinking through tactical approaches and scientific priorities, his mind adapting Federation training to Stargate reality. A knock at his door. Tilk stood in the corridor, carrying 2 cups of coffee. I thought you might require companionship, Captain Kirk. The transition from provisional to permanent assignment can be contemplative. Kirk accepted the coffee with gratitude. How did you handle it, Tilk? When you left everything you knew to join SG-1? Your position as First Prime, your standing among the Jaffa, your entire life? Tilk's expression held ancient wisdom. I realize that home is not a place or a time, Captain Kirk. It is purpose. It is standing beside those who share your values and fighting for what is right. I found that with SG-1. I believe you have as well. I have, Kirk admitted. It's just, the Enterprise, my crew, they're still out there in my timeline, wondering what happened to me. And I'm here, 260 years in the past, fighting wars they'll never know about. Perhaps, Tilk said quietly. Or perhaps your Federation exists because of what you do here. Temporal mechanics are complex, but cause and effect remain constant. The future you remember may depend on the past you are creating. Kirk considered that. The possibility that every mission, every life saved, every small victory against the Goa'uld was building toward the Federation he'd served. That James T. Kirk's greatest mission wasn't captaining the Enterprise, but ensuring humanity survived long enough to build it. Then I'd better not screw it up, Kirk said with a slight smile. Indeed, Tilk replied, the word carrying warmth. We will ensure you do not. They sat in companionable silence, 2 warriors from different worlds, drinking coffee and preparing for tomorrow's mission. Through Kirk's window, The mountain stood solid and eternal, housing the Stargate 28 levels below. Humanity's gateway to the stars. Earth's defense against impossible odds. And now James T. Kirk's news ship. He'd lost the Enterprise. Lost his timeline. Lost the crew that had been his family for years. But he'd found SG-1. Found a war worth fighting. Found that the principles that made him a starship captain worked just as well defending Earth in the 21st century as they would exploring the galaxy in the 23rd. Tomorrow, they'd step through the Stargate again. Ancient ruins waited. Unknown dangers lurked. The Goa'uld schemed. Captain Kirk would face them with the only crew he had now. And that was enough. More than enough. Indeed. Hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories. Thank you for watching.